right, guys, and we're back for another episode, and we're talking all about niching down. How are you going to make your money and from who? So I'm really excited for this episode because we've honestly had a wild ride when it comes to niches. I feel like we've landed, and also there's been times where it's not landed and we end up working with people and we're like, why the fuck are we working with these people? We don't give a shit about their business. And honestly, that's what this whole episode is about, because there's nothing wrong with working with someone and being like, straight up, I'm just unaligned. Like, 100%. I don't care about this. And as a service provider, you will learn so fast that in order for you to actually be fulfilled, like I'm sure you see all my videos and I'm like, oh my God, like become a web designer, be so fulfilled, do what you love. And then you might be working with someone and you're like, I don't know what that bitch is talking about, because that's not how you feel. It's probably because your niche sucks right now and you're
or
working
at least
with people.
It's just not aligned.
Okay, maybe that's a nicer way to put it. But it's okay, because we all go through like that phase of just figuring it out. And I think that's what's also so beautiful, you know, with building a business, is that we have to start somewhere.
And it doesn't always happen overnight. I think that a lot of the time, like, especially when you're talking to, or when I'm talking to beginners, especially web designers, there's this idea that like from day one, I'm just picking a niche because like, boom, it just happened. And honestly, that's not how it works. Like most of the time it's,
you can like fall in your lap.
Yeah. Like you meet a client or you land a client and then you deliver it. And then boom, that client's whole audience is like, I want their website. And then you get 3 more paid clients from them. And you're like, damn, at this point, the last 5 websites I've done have been for this specific industry. Like I think maybe at this point I'm finding my niche.
Yeah,
totally. It happens totally organically, unless I would say like the one caveat, or like not even caveat, but the one time is if you're coming from a past career, especially like a tenured career where you've had like a lot of experience in it, you might have enough like network and qualifications in that career to immediately supercharge your web design business by just sticking right in it.
Yeah, it's so true. Well, and when you're starting out, so if you're listening to this and you're a web designer, or if you're creative in general and you're like, I need to figure out my niche, I have no idea how to get started or where to even go, what I will say is you have to just try.
Yeah.
And this is something that will evolve and change, because then I would say, you know, once you're, you know, more established and you know who you like to work with, stop taking on everyone.
Yeah.
But in the beginning, like, it's okay. You got bills to pay, you need to make money, and you want to just say yes. That's okay. I feel like in the first 6 months, be like a yes man. Like that's totally okay, because then you're going to learn so much. And it's actually better, because you might even think, oh, for sure, I'm going to work with X, Y, and Z. And then you start working with them. Or if you don't take on someone else because they're not within that niche, you might be like closing a door or a potential, you know, entire like room of people, you know, because you think that you're in this niche. So like, I really think in the first 6 months, let yourself take on people. Even if you're like, I've honestly never considered doing a website for blank, just try. But then once you feel like you hit it, and I'm actually curious, let's talk a little bit about like how you know if you've hit it. So I even just like think about my own journey from finding a niche, because when I first started out, I had no niche at all. I was in that phase of taking on anyone. I wanted to make money. I said yes. And totally, it made me not like some of my clients. It made me not like some of the experiences, but it was totally a part of just like the learning process. But it's honestly crazy thinking back to like some of the websites that I've done. I'm sure, like, do you remember the one that I did? I don't even know what they did, but I swear it was like
a home for elders or something.
It was, or like an element. I was going more.
It was an organization of some sort, and I totally actually was referencing it to somebody a couple days ago.
So like amazing work. They're amazing, but they're very like nonprofit vibe.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Totally. If that's your niche, like fucking get it. But not my niche. Yeah. And I went into like a whole different path, but I remember working with them and being like, this is not what I want to do. It was like way too vanilla cookie cutter. Like I wanted to do shit where I could have like flames and red and like, you know, like women feeling like sexy and embracing themselves in these photo shoots and being able to utilize that. And so this like I think that they got the money that they invested into me from like the government. So I'm like, that is just not the route that I want to go. But I had to do it to learn.
Honestly.
So I had like a whole phase where I just did that. And then I ended up taking on, a few clients. And it's like, it probably took me, I don't know, a year to really be like, this is my niche. Like, this is who I want to work with.
I'm curious on something, because you had asked, before you went into that, you asked, like, when do you know that you found your niche? Mm-hmm. And I'm curious, what is it like to you? What does it mean to have found it?
I would say that it means like, you'll know that you found your niche when you feel really excited, lit up, and content with majority of your clients. Now, I'm not going to say 100% because
there's always going to be nuances.
Well, and also you're working with people, and sometimes people just fucking suck. So maybe it's like 90%. You feel that way, you love what you do. You love working with them. You feel like it's a creative outlet, because at the end of the day, that's what this is.
Do you feel like it becomes easier? Like, do you feel like once you found your niche, you're like, I'm actually feeling like this is a little bit easier now?
It becomes a creative outlet where how I felt when I was designing the website for the like nonprofit company, it felt like a job. Yeah. It felt like I was hired for a job. And that's not what I want at all. I don't want a job. And I don't think you have to create a job for yourself. Obviously, it is a job, but it doesn't need to feel like a job.
Let's think of it as a career.
Yeah. Oh, but are those different?
I think that they might have a little bit of difference to it.
The exact same. But also most people hate their fucking careers. So I'm talking about like, it is as if you go to like, you're like an artist and you go to a studio every day and you love what you do. That's how I want you to feel when you do web design. And I think that's definitely how I teach people to feel. Yep. That's like what I emphasize on. I'm always like, follow your fucking path, do what you want to do, and like be lit up doing it.
Yep.
And so I think that having a niche also really helps with that. Now, I will say, because I'm sure if you're listening to this and you're especially in like the new phase trying to figure it out, you're going to be like, what is a niche? And I think that it's really important to understand that a niche is not just specific to
someone's like
a title, or who, what they do in the online space, or if they're not on the online space, is it a gym? Is it that? Like, that doesn't even fucking matter most of the time. It can also just be a vibe.
Yep.
Like, it's about your design style, your artistic, like unique ability to represent someone online that can also connect with people just as much as a niche.
Yep.
Now, I'm going to say also, if you're listening to this and you're like, why the fuck would I niche down? Why can't I work with everyone and anyone? It's about messaging and positioning, because this is going to be your biggest marketing setback if you have no idea, because when you're talking to everyone, you're talking to no one, and that's just facts. And so if you can realize why people are gravitated towards you, why people want to give you thousands of dollars, because it's not a small ask.
Right.
You're asking people to send someone random they just met on Instagram $5,000, like,
and invest time and energy for the next like couple of weeks, if not couple of months, with that person.
Like, you need to develop trust, and how you're gonna develop trust is establishing your positioning and messaging, and that the easiest way you can do that is by niching down. So that's what I did. As soon as I niched down and I was like, okay, I'm going to work with women who are in like the more spiritual coaching world, I was then able to talk directly to them. My templates were directly designed for them, and it allowed people to come onto my website, look at who I was, look at how I designed, and be like, this bitch is for me.
100%. And I also think that with that, from like an outside perspective, from watching you and honestly many others like quote unquote find their niche, it also really comes down to finding a group of people that will allow you to be the professional in the relationship. Because a lot of the time, and I would say that this goes on almost every niche or vertical that I've ever worked in, there is a group of people that really look to find a designer or creative, like it's designer, copywriter, photographer, kind of all in the same. Some people really look for a specialist or someone that's able to bring something to life and create something. Oftentimes, though, there are also another group of people that are looking just for the job to get done.
Yeah.
And when you were able to find the people that were like, Becca, I want to create the best website that I can for my business. These are the things that I offer. These are the programs that I offer. How can we do that? And they started allowing you to help them find a photographer, dictate what the vibe was going to be, and then also really allow you as the designer to like lean into this website.
Yeah. I'm just going to give a hot tip also that I thought of as you were saying that is if you can niche down in smaller businesses, like I'm talking
less than 5 members.
3. Like when I was working with businesses that had a bunch of people, you end up getting a lot of people who had a lot of bullshit to say. And it ends up being such a big headache. And I also think back to, other companies, like let's just keep using this one example, the one that
this nonprofit that we think might be an elementary elderly home.
Yeah. It's like, I remember I was working with whoever hired me. She was like a really sweet old lady. And then she had this guy who wasn't involved in the creative at all. I can't even tell you his name. But he then would start giving feedback, but she prioritized his voice because he like designed their old website on WordPress and that he like knows how to develop some things.
You know what I hate?
What?
That I'm totally that guy. On so many calls.
I mean, honestly, you are. But it became such a headache because then I would do something like they hired me for my expertise.
Yeah.
And then they had this dude that was on their team that knew how to do something back in fucking 1980s on WordPress. And it was so frustrating. And I always thought to myself, why are you not then having him do this for you? Like, why are you paying me for me to come in and do this? And I've even had it with people, that have like multiple assistants on their team. And then they have their assistants give feedback. And then I'll do the feedback and then I'll give it to the higher up. And then they're like, no, I don't like that. I'm like, I don't give a fuck. That's what your assistant just told me to do. Like sometimes it's better to work with people when it's just them. And
so it's like working directly with the decision maker.
Totally. And that's something that honestly I set boundaries on now because I've had enough experience where I know I am not willing to spend double the energy getting multiple people's feedback.
Yeah.
What I say now is if you have people on your team, when I send something over for a decision making, you guys need to work together as a team and give me a consolidated point of view. Because what it is if you have a bunch of different people giving you perspectives, you're getting a shit ton of different POVs. And that is the most frustrating thing as a service provider or creative in general. And so you guys need to figure your shit out and give me a consolidated list from one agreed POV.
Honestly, can we like flip the gears a little bit and talk about, so inside of Passive Passion Project, for all of our designers that were interested, or if you are interested in launching a template shop, one of the things that I teach on inside of Passive Passion Project is the saturation level of these like specific niches that especially got really popular over the last couple of years, and kind of how to navigate. Do I go into a more saturated niche? Is there pros of that? Or do I go after this niche that like no one is even thinking about? And where do you find yourself navigating that? And I think that, to be honest, like the really saturated niches to me are like photographers, and even if you get into wedding photographers, even more, and then also coaches. But there's nuance to that. And I would say also, when I talk to beginners who are wanting to start out and have the easiest time, I'd also still recommend those 2 exact most oversaturated niches, because the like double-edged sword or icing on the cake is that there's also an oversaturation of wedding photographers, and there's an oversaturation of coaches. And there is something that is similar about both wedding photographers and coaches. In their industry, they charge considerably more than all the others. Like when we think about photographers, a wedding photographer is able to charge 3 to 10 times more for that day of shooting than shooting for a brand or shooting for a senior portrait or anything like that. Similarly, like as a coach, you could be charging 10 times what like a very, very seasoned consultant that has been doing consulting their whole career charges. And so if you're a web designer or really any sort of support role wanting to help these businesses, know that you just found a jackpot because they're already hyperinflated.
Yeah. And if you're trying to decide on a niche, choose a niche that is still growing every single day. So there are all these different, you know, high level coaches for all these different niches that are then coaching, you know, people by the hundreds under
to
that.
become like them.
There are photographers then who have become an educator who are then teaching people how to become photographers. There are coaches that coach coaches. So what you're getting is just multiplied niches. So if you can choose a niche, because like, think about it. If you're going to choose a niche that's like juice shops or gyms, like how fucking fast are gyms popping up everywhere?
And I think
you know
that,
what I mean?
I think that another really big piece of that, and I like, if you talk to me about business and stuff, especially on Instagram, like I am very like impartial to this like online space. And I think that one of the pieces of that really, really differs when you think about juice shops or gyms, unless they are the gym owner itself is specifically like involved in like gym marketing content. We're talking about these in-person brick and mortar businesses that have zero, like in their day-to-day life, they likely have zero influence on wanting to really scale. Where when you look about other businesses that are social media based, they all follow coaches. They all follow all of these people that influence them to invest in their business, to grow their team, to grow their business every day. Like if you're listening to this, I guarantee that if you go on Instagram, you're going to be influenced to essentially just grow professionally by like 30+% of the people that you follow. And for you as a web designer to realize that all of those other people influencing that same point help you become that investment that helps those people grow.
Yeah. Also, niching down with someone or, you know, a niche in the online space is going to help you be seen so much more because you can find pockets like social media, you know, unless there's like a Facebook group for local gyms where they're all in one place, like it's going to be really hard to necessarily poach someone.
Find
You're
them
going to
and
go
organize
door to
it.
door and just meet people one by one. That's so slow. And that's not how you're going to really scale and actually grow wealth as a service provider. You have to think about how you can tap in online and find pockets of them. And so that's like why on Instagram, I'm always like, use it as a search engine. Like type in who's your niche, search it. There you go. Thousands.
Honestly,
It's the easiest thing.
feel like I want to like switch gears again because I feel like you had a really easy time finding your niche comparatively to me, maybe. And I want to also throw out there that like for me, I feel like your niche also really should evolve with you. While you can really stick to something, I think that as you grow, it's really important for you to kind of update who you feel like you can actually serve the best. And with that, my biggest tip is at the beginning, let it not be specified to a specific niche and instead try and get as much experience in as many different things as you can.
Totally.
Because I feel like when I honestly got my like niche finding experience from when I first had a couple of videos blow up on TikTok because I had an offer at the time. It was a 90-minute intensive for $497 and it was the only offer that you could book from my site. Like everything else was application based.
What did you do in that like year? I feel like I
probably did 70 or 80 of them. I don't know.
So many.
Like a ton, to the point where some weeks I would do like 15 in a week.
So more than 80.
Yeah, probably more than 80.
You did so many.
But for that time, I was working with so many different people, like all of these Shopify brands, all of these coaches, all of these random even businesses like Amazon sellers and Etsy shops, and like all of these people that were finding me, had interest in working with me and wanted information from me. And I honestly, during that time, probably thought that I had found my niche. Every Friday afternoon, if you would have asked me, hey, Willow, like, what's your niche? I'd be like, yep, found it. Just did 15 calls with them each week, and it's something different. And I think that at that time, my mind and my business almost felt like turbulent because it was like, holy shit, like I'm just on the ride. And I felt like I was riding this wave of like trying to figure it out and really figuring it out as I go. And it honestly took me over a year from that point to even have any idea what I would call my niche.
Yeah.
Like it really took 80 plus clients for me to feel like I found it.
But that's also totally okay. And that's like just a part of growing your business, especially because you had never been a business owner before. How the hell are you supposed to know?
Exactly.
So it's also like give yourself grace and just like take it day by day, figure it out. And don't be afraid to like get your feet wet, like work with a bunch of different people.
Don't be afraid to actually work. I feel like that's like this like thing that.
Okay, now you're sounding like Kim K.
Bitches these days don't want to work.
She did not say that.
Well, that's how I feel. But I'm honestly being serious. And I feel like, you know, it's important to remember that Instagram is like, it's this highlight reel. And I share all the time when I'm not working. And I also work all the time that I don't share. And I think that there's this like secret door in the back of all these online businesses that are ourselves as business owners go in and are like, hey, also I am working like if you're going to be a web designer, you're going to actually have a lot of websites to design and all this work. And
totally.
I think that that's where finding your niche and finding work that does feel more like that passion, more like that, like
lights you up.
It lights you up. And
it doesn't feel like work. That's
exactly.
Like, that should be everyone's goal. If you can take one thing away from becoming a business owner, it's that you have to find work that doesn't feel like fucking work.
Yes.
You're going to always be miserable.
100%. And I want to throw one piece of feedback also that I had said, just to add a little bit more context as to, I mentioned that if you were getting started and you were like looking for the easiest route, it was to go into the more saturated niches because like there's more competition, but there's also a lot more potential. And I will say that when you're starting out, what is going on in your life outside of this web design business really can and should dictate how aggressively you're going after a niche. Because if you are starting out and you're like, I need to pay my bills, I did decide to leave my job or I'm not coming from another job and I need to be making money, like I am doing this to make money, then getting clients at the beginning that are just willing to pay and are going to be that experience for you might be more important than being like, all right, I'm leaving my 9-to-5 in the next 6 months, but right now I'm really trying to find clients that are really aligned. There's really pros and cons of both, but I also really don't want to shy away from that. If you are starting and you need to make money in this, I would recommend going after just being open to everything at the beginning and then letting your niche kind of be found in months like 6 through 18.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. Well, I think that was a lot.
Are we niched out?
We're niched out.
Well, if you guys have any questions about niches or you want feedback, make sure to drop them in the comments. And if you wouldn't mind giving us a 5 stars, we are freshly into our 4th season of the Wealthy Web Designer podcast. And we want to keep on bringing you guys these episodes,
keep
and bringing all of the value. And we want to know what you guys want to know about. So if you're a web designer, you're a creative, drop in the comments where you are listening from, whether you're listening on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple, maybe even Amazon. No matter what, comment, let us know where you're listening from.
And with that, see you next episode.